Welcome to the Morning Prep Podcast. We've got a minute because the kids haven't started to line up yet. I'm your host, Nathan Van. So this episode is a little bit different. It's just going to be a quick little 10-minute spot because as I was running through my coaching sessions last week, and as I was just reflecting more on the practice of teaching and the practice of leadership as well, just something really important came to mind. And it focuses in on what do we do as teachers and what do we do as leaders when things start to get a little bit more tense. And one trend that I've noticed is that typically if you're in a leadership position, you are a person who likes some measure of control. You like to be in charge, you like to have a plan, you like to see the plan executed, and you like to have the details organized. Even if it's not always by you, and even if not all those things are done specifically by you, those are things that you tend to appreciate. Again, I'm speaking in generalities because I know that there are multiple different leadership styles and multiple different ways to lead and guide and run an organization. Likewise, in being a teacher, you have your classroom rules, you have your classroom expectations, you have your own organization of your lesson, you have your own organization of desks, like you have your plan set out completely beforehand, and any sort of diversion from that can tend to cause a little consternation. And so one thing that I tend to notice is that when things get stressful and things get difficult, we tend as teachers and as leaders tend to hold on to things with a much tighter grip. We tend to not let go. In the teaching context, what this tends to look like is that the teacher in the classroom would either lecture more or talk more or just keep things moving forward in a way without letting students get any sort of input, without letting students ask questions, without getting feedback from students, without asking students to do questions, without doing things like cold calling, for example. And that's what I've noticed. It's a trend that I've seen in many teachers' practices, and it's a trend that I saw very early in my practice as well, where again, when I started to feel as if I was losing control in the classroom, I would do whatever I could to keep control. And that was very often to the detriment of my students. Just one more example of this from a bit nerdier perspective. As I mentioned before, The Lord of the Rings is honestly one of my favorite book series of all time. And I just want to focus in on the character of Denethor, the steward of Gondor. He is a prime example of a leader who just did not let go of control. Now, in the text, what it states is that stewards were there to essentially hold the place until the king arrived again. And Denethor did not want to let go of control. He did everything he could to maintain control, and that led to his death. Now, I'm not saying that this is something that will lead to your death if you do not do, but it is something that I want you to keep in mind that history and literature is fraught with examples of leaders who tend to hold on and not let go a little bit, and leading it to their downfall, to their destruction. So back to the classroom. What tended to happen is that I would move very quickly through any sort of a lecture or presentation that I was doing, and then I would expand upon that lecture, or expand upon that presentation, or then if that was done, I would move very quickly into the assignment without, again, giving students the opportunity to ask questions, and then I would have them work independently on the assignment. And then when the assignment was done, I would begin to answer all of the questions. I would ask a couple kids questions. If they didn't have an answer, then I would just move on and I would continue answering the questions and moving forward. And I would keep talking and talking and talking until the end of class. And the problem was that, by all accounts, I had the structure and the organization of a very strong and clear lesson. But in the end, I would have to ask myself, did the kids really learn anything? Did I push them to think? Did I increase the level of rigor of the assignments? Essentially, did I allow my students to take ownership of their own education? Now, when I was this episode and these topics and ideas, I put out a question on pretty much all social media platforms. And this question was, what was the one piece of advice that fundamentally changed your... And he wrote, distinguished educators facilitate student-led small group learning as opposed to hand-holding direct instruction lecture. And he says that it's from his mentor in his first year of teaching. And yeah, it's the true sign of a mark of a good teacher is when the teacher allows the students to take ownership of their own learning, where we as the teacher in the room learn to let go. Thank you, Matt, for that comment, because I mean, that is a huge idea that, again, we tend to lose in the classroom, especially when things start to get a little bit more hectic. So remember that this week, again, starting Monday morning, you have a fresh week in front of you, whether, again, you're doing it through Zoom or whether you are in person right now. You're starting fresh. I want you to have that in the forefront of your mind. You need to be willing to let go of control in the classroom and put the onus of learning on your students. You need to be willing, when you cold call on a student, to wait in silence and wait for a response. Kids need that think time. Think about every time you've been in any sort of professional development. How often your principal or your coach or your manager will ask you a question and you freeze up. And you're like, oh, shoot, what do I say? And you just need that moment to think. Your students are the same exact way. You're going to ask them a question. You got to give them that moment to think. You got to give them that opportunity as well to sweat it out a little bit. Okay. And that's a fundamental key to really good leadership and good teaching and good leadership is, again, when you are feeling stressed, don't reach out and try to grab and hold on to more and more control. Okay. You have to fight that impulse and that desire. I'm not saying give away control once you start to feel stressed, not necessarily, but I'm saying at least in that moment, don't try to reach out for more control, because in the end, what's going to end up happening is you're not going to reach necessarily the objectives that you're looking to reach. If you're a teacher in a classroom, you are not necessarily going to push your students to fully master the objective or the skill in which you are setting out for them. So keep that in mind as you get ready. Be sure to follow and like us on Facebook at Morning Prep Pod. If you have a question or episode to suggest, you can send an email directly at morningpreppod@gmail.com. And keep a lookout for any sorts of questions that are posted on the Facebook page, because as you just heard right now, some of those questions, some of your answers as well, will be featured right on the show. So this is the Morning Prep Podcast. The bell is about to ring, and I'll see you in the classroom. You're still listening. That's awesome. So this is my little sponsored segment here where I'm just going to make a quick little pitch and you kind of do with it what you will. So this one is focused in on Anchor. Anchor is the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. First off, it is free. All right? Free. You don't have to put in a dime and you can start making podcasts and having them distributed. Secondly, there is a creation tool on the website itself that you can record your shows directly on and have them uploaded instantly. Next is that Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, plus many, many more. A really cool feature is that you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It is everything that you need to make a podcast in one place. So download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm and you can get started. Now, after this is a quick little show update. I just want to give you all a quick little podcast update for a little bit of behind the scenes stuff. I believe that I failed to mention before what the typical recording schedule is. So I just want you all to know, be on the lookout on Tuesday mornings for new episodes to drop. Those will be the larger, longer episodes ranging between 20 to 30 minutes. And then be looking for, just littered throughout the week every now and again, just special little bonus episodes that are about 5 to 10 minutes in length that just want to hit on one really key point that doesn't take too much time to elaborate on. So those are just the two quick announcements I want y'all to be on the lookout for. Again, as always, if you have any ideas, comments, or suggestions, or even improvements for the show, let me know on Facebook. Send me an email at morningpreppod@gmail.com. And I am more than happy and more than willing to hear all of your feedback. Thank you all, everybody. And again, I will see you in your classroom. Bye.